Alright, I'm kind of doing two in a row here, so we're going to talk about these three, and then there'll be one that I'm doing like right after this that'll come out in like a couple of days or something, that go into three other ones. But in the meantime, I want to start with these three, and even though the other two are more, I guess you could say, popular in various ways, I actually think I want to start with Death of a Unicorn. Maybe when you look at these other two, I guess it's the easiest to talk about, so we'll just start here. And when I heard this concept and the idea of where it was going, it did seem like it was a bit of a... I mean, despite being like an A24 movie and all that, like it was going to be a sort of one-trick idea where it's like, oh, it's a dark unicorn movie or a unicorn horror movie. This happens to star a comedic actor, and that was basically going to be, like, the whole joke was going to be, oh, unicorns are so happy and magical, but oh, this is dark and scary and gory or whatever. And that was going to pretty much be it, and I guess I guess that's kind of what it is, but this is one that I kind of got progressively more into as it went. It is kind of slow going at the start for a little while, and then its second half just decides to go crazy. It's one of those. But in the meantime, one thing that did surprise me is I knew about Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega kind of being at the center here of the event that makes the whole rest of the movie happen. Did not realize just how top tier of a cast this is. I kept getting surprised every time somebody came up, like Richard E. Grant and Téa Leoni and Anthony Carrigan. Will Poulter, who's like basically a professional scene stealer at this point, and this movie is going to be another shining example of that and his ability to do that. And I was surprised that I was under the impression it was like a dark comedy kind of thing, and technically it is, but it's not near as comedic as I thought it might be. It really sort of focuses on the dark angle and the horror angle. And even before, it goes crazy in the second half, there is this sort of, like, sinister feeling over the entire first half as things are coming together. Just when we're meeting the characters, there's something that just feels like it's really sinister going on. And the comedy's kind of kept to a minimum apart from, like, Will Poulter's character or Anthony Carrigan's character, who's, like, a butler-esque kind of person that's lingering around the house and basically just does what he's ordered to do, with like that little bit of sass. There's definitely some NoHo Hank hanging on in this particular performance, which is okay. I have no issues with that whatsoever. So, and there is one moment where it is surprising that when you see Poulter and Carrigan kind of being the comedy of the movie, that Paul Rudd is more or less playing it pretty straight. There's like one very sort of Paul Rudd moment that might have been right out of a David Wayne movie where he has the, it's almost like the Garth moment in Wayne's World. They have like a celebratory drink, but by the time he gets the bottle, it's empty, so he just has like, he does this phantom pour into his glass and takes a phantom drink of it. But other than that, I think he's supposed to be a pretty unlikable character. But I think that's kind of the problem with the casting of Rudd. Because as far as, like, Rudd and Ortega being at the center, they don't really go beyond what would typically be asked of them, I think. And this is something where I feel like, in something like this, and with their casting, you kind of expect that this might be a different sort of thing for them. But Ortega, who I do love, and who is extremely talented, is basically asked to do a lot of the same stuff we've seen her do before. And with Rudd, I think it's maybe more of a miscasting issue, because you can tell by the choices he makes, he's supposed to be incredibly unlikable. He has to be. And by casting an actor that you're just sort of used to liking, and him not really sort of being able to break completely out of that box is gonna really hinder this character. So, like if it was, somebody that... Not necessarily somebody that always plays unlikable people, but if it was an actor that, like, wasn't, like, known for their likability usually, I think that probably would have been a better start. If not, maybe too safe, but I just don't know. I think it's in the casting about the what Rudd's doing here, kind of not really working too much. And talking about, actors kind of being asked to do the same thing, there are moments where he has, like, moments of not so much desperation, but urgency in, like, these really high-stakes moments. And you kind of just see, like, the scenes in Ant-Man where he has to talk to his daughter or something. Or, like, the urgent scenes in those. It doesn't really feel like he's broken out and done something kind of off the wall and different. Like, something like, I guess you could say, like, what he did in Mute, Duncan Jones's movie, where he was, like, kind of the villain. But even then, it was, like, it's always kind of hard to see him in parts that go against... Like, he's one of those actors that's really hard to cast against type, and for it to completely pay off. And I don't think that's a fault of his. I just think he's really good in a particular area. And it's hard to break out of that in this particular way. So... that's kind of something that and given that they're, like, the center of the movie, and also the emotional center of the movie, I feel like that's something that's really holding the movie back, is what's going on with the two of them. So that's kind of unfortunate, but, like I said, once we get to the second half, and everything sort of starts to match the craziness that feels like is underlying between, like, the Will Poulter character and the Taya Leone character, and Richard E. Grant to an extent also. And then it just goes off and basically becomes a gore fest. A gore fest in a way I was not expecting. So it kind of goes all in on the gore factor. And I was actually pleasantly surprised, because the movie really needed an injection of something, because there's definitely something that could have been in this first half that they're trying for, which is the satire angle of, like, the rich and how they destroy things, especially sacred things, to become richer. But it surprisingly doesn't feel that biting of a satire, I think, just because it's so clear. Like, I feel like some of the best satire, like, kind of sneaks up on you, like, they'll be doing it, and halfway through you're like, oh, shit, I kind of see what they're saying here. It's apparent the whole time, what is being said about these characters and what they do, and how much we can see that in real life. So when you kind of recognize it immediately like that, and there's not really... And you're already set for the concept, so even the concept doesn't really sneak up on you that much, so... I said, it kind of lacks the bite that it feels like it's really trying to have, and it really should have. That would have made this something really... sort of above average of what it's doing here, and what it's... Yeah, you can pretty much see what it's doing from the get-go. That's why it was like, when I was surprised by how gory it was, that's when I finally felt like, oh, this is something that feels that I didn't quite know we were going in that direction. So that was refreshing once we got to that point. Even if you could say it might get a little messy, but again, it almost feels like the answer to those criticisms I had of the first half should be answered with chaos and a little messiness. And so that I was starting to appreciate it more as it went. It is another one of those movies that's a victim of having one scene too many, where it reaches a scene that's a perfectly fine ending, that would have been a perfectly fine cut to black, and there is a really needless last scene. And I'm still trying to figure out how to read it, and I don't think it's supposed to be ambiguous, but it is. You know, it's one of those where I don't think that was the vibe they were going for, but, yeah, so that's something that really wasn't needed. So that's more or less how I feel about this. So it's very much kind of a mixed bag of things going on here, but the cast is really irresistible, and like I said, when it really kicks into gear in that second half, I was eventually on board with it. So it is fun when you get there. So it's like, in the second half is the fun you're expecting when you go into a movie called Death of a Unicorn. So it's there somewhere. So it has that going for it. So I think the next thing I want to go into is a Minecraft movie, which a lot of people have had a lot of strong feelings from many directions about. The thing about it is, it's not even just Minecraft. I'm just not a gamer, period. Like the N64 is what I know, and that's about the extent of it. So I didn't really even know what this game's concept was or anything. I knew what it looked like. Like, I think I had a vague idea of what the game looked like and what the characters looked like and what the like landscapes looked like. But other than that, I really knew nothing about this. So the fact that it begins with basically Jack Black giving a tutorial is actually, for somebody like me, is actually quite helpful. So I will say, going in, I had heard that this was a movie where its target audience was extremely happy. Which kind of sways like younger. So this is one of those movies where it came out and it was basically like a Marvel movie where everybody was reacting in a really big way to all of like the inside references or whatever, in jokes, whatever it may be. And basically everything was like, yes, this is what we've been waiting for. There was also a lot of people saying it was going to be like really bad and cringy and stuff like that. Like I said, I didn't come in from any direction. It was just like, this is just another movie to me. So with that in mind, and I didn't see it. I always go when there's like not crowd. I make sure to go to show times where there's not a crowd. So I didn't have any sort of big experience. It was just basically me and the movie and some scattered people that were relatively quiet. So I didn't have like this really big experience one way or the other. There's a lot of stuff I'm sure went completely by me that are like these really big references. Would have had no idea whatsoever what any of that was. So looking at it from that perspective, and if you're unaware, I'm somebody that doesn't watch trailers either. So I just had nothing. I just had no expectations whatsoever going into this. I did know that Jared Hess made it, the guy that did Napoleon Dynamite and Nacho Libre and stuff like that. But I also know when you typically do movies like this that are like these really big things that come from these big products that are basically, you know, really big commercials, essentially, that somebody with a signature style can lose that style between, like, studios and stuff, and what they want, and producers and stuff like that, what all they want. So what I was really surprised to find was the first, like, 20 minutes or so of this movie, especially the school scenes, are such a Jared Hess movie. That was really surprising. In a movie this big, that was really interesting to see. And I was also really surprised because I feel like I had heard more of the negative side going into it, where everybody was like, this is gonna suck, this is gonna be the cringiest thing ever. For whatever reason, I don't know. I don't know if that's related to it being like the game or not like the game, or what they were doing differently. I don't know. What they do differently, I don't know. So I mostly went in thinking that people were feeling negative about it. So I was really surprised in this first 20 minutes or so that there were a lot of laughs, like from me. like I really wasn't expecting that, because I didn't really have any expectations. I didn't even know if I was expecting a comedy for sure. But I was surprised there were so many laughs, I thought, in like that first 20 minutes or so when we first meet Jack Black's character, and he does, like, you know, it's obviously hired him to do the Jack Black thing, and this is somebody that the director, somebody he's worked with before. So he gets, like, you know, this little musical number in, like, his very first scene. But it's kind of a funny number, but then it comes back, like, 2 minutes later, it comes back. And I'm not somebody that, like, laughs, like, out loud, outwardly. But when he brought, like, one lyric of the song back, like, 2 minutes later, after he's in, like, the Minecraft world, or whatever you call it, that was just really funny to me. And that happened many times in this sort of opening sequence here, where we're introduced to Jason Momoa's character and all that other stuff. There was also the moment when, this may be me thinking the wrong way also, when he meets, like, when Jack Black meets, like, the head villain, and the first thing she says is, "Who are you and why are you so round?" And it occurred to me after the fact, it's like, oh, because all the other characters are, like, cube-shaped. It's weird to see somebody, like, human-shaped. My first thought, though, was immediately, it was just really funny to me that the first thing she would say is, "Who are you?" and then insult him in the same sentence. No, I'm guessing it's because they're cute bodies. Probably a double reference there also. I found that very funny. That was another one of those outwardly laughs that I don't typically do very often. So then there's the main kid Henry. His first interaction with Jason Momoa is pretty hysterical also, and I was just so surprised how consistently laughs. There's lines in there like when Henry's in school and one of the kids says, "My dad says that math's been debunked" or something like that, and just stuff like that is like so just hilarious, and I didn't expect that. And so, now that I'm saying all this about the stuff that's in the real world. So I did have a fear in the back of my mind of, is it going to keep up this vibe once we're in the other world? And it's... Yeah, I forgot to mention, there's another scene with the storage unit scene with Jermaine Clement. Who's also reuniting with the director, and who's also amazing for one scene. He has a couple of lines that got me as well. And this, like I said, this is all in the real world stuff. So when we actually go into the world, I was a little concerned of where we would end up. Because we also have, the older sister, and we have Danielle Brooks, Oscar nominee Danielle Brooks, who was so amazing in The Color Purple. And what's interesting about this, first of all, is at the end of the day, I do think there's probably too many characters going in too many directions. I think that's something to start off with as far as maybe it not hitting as well as it went on and became more of like the adventure movie rather than like, because it starts off as basically a straight comedy and then that comedy goes into an adventure movie, and that's what we're doing here. So you can get like, the later Jumanji vibes, not just because of the Jack Black carryover. So there's a lot of that also in the real world versus the game world and all that. You get that vibe, and that's probably something they were going for intentionally to a certain degree. And so, yeah, once the adventure aspect comes in, it does feel a bit more... I started to get checked out quicker. The comedy's still in there, and this interesting, almost bizarre chemistry between Jack Black and Jason Momoa does help carry it a lot. But that's another thing that kind of equates to, I think there's a lot of characters going on here, because once they split up and they go their other ways, you learn quickly which characters you want to see and which characters you kind of don't really care if they cut back to or not. There's also this strange sort of side thing going on where one of the characters comes out into the real world, still looking like they do, still with the cube-shaped body, and they meet Jennifer Coolidge, who we met at the school earlier, and then this becomes a whole thing that is completely separate from the movie. It has absolutely nothing to do with everything else that's going on. And it never, like, comes back around to anything. It has, like, a payoff. If you know a certain actor, it has a payoff. But apart from that, it has no connection to anything else whatsoever. When we're cutting back to it, it's funny, and Jennifer Coolidge is funny, obviously, but it's so easily something that could be cut out. And same thing, like I said, for, like, a lot of the other characters. I don't want to completely jump to basically anybody that's not Jack Black or Jason Momoa and they're teaming up could be cut out necessarily, but and I was significantly less interested whenever they weren't on screen. But like I said, even then, once they were in the game and it was more of an adventure thing, my interest was kind of going in and out as it went. That could just be me being an old person, I don't know, but or somebody, like I said, that's not a gamer who hasn't played this or even really knew about it before coming into it. That's probably plays a big part in it. Like, a lot of this movie is me giving the benefit of the doubt that I'm just out of touch with it. But, because, like, I can imagine if it's something, if there's, like, a lot of references and in-jokes in there, and, like, the gameplay is in there or whatever, I could see this being, like, a really big sort of event movie for a lot of people, as it apparently is. So, to my understanding, it's actually surprising a lot of people just how well it's doing right now, money-wise. So, good for it. and good for Jared Hess for actually kind of getting to put, like, his touch on a movie that's this big and seems this sort of studio-driven. So I do think, even, like I said, without knowing a lot about this particular thing, I do feel like there's a likability to this movie that takes it pretty far, even if I wasn't into it the whole time. Because, like I said, I also assumed that a lot of the creativity that's in it, like a lot of things I was acknowledging as like, oh, that's interesting or that's creative, presumably it comes directly from the game, I'd imagine. So, like, so like, how much credit do we give the movie? Because the creativity does pretty much all stem from the game, I assume, or if it's like because they were able to translate that into like an actual movie, that should probably be commended also, I guess. So there is that. But like I said, with a lot of the characters and the side things, it does feel like it's stretching itself quite a bit. And it's already not terribly long. It's like an hour 40 something, which these days is quite reasonable, especially for a big movie. So that's... Yeah, so like I'm fine with this, but like I said, I'm coming from like no knowledge of anything at all related to this. So make of that what you will. So let's end on Snow White. There's a reason I want to end on Snow White, because I want to get through this as fast as possible. Not even necessarily probably for the reason you're thinking, because, yeah, another week, another movie that the internet is saying is the worst movie ever made. We're doing this over again. However, yes, this obviously wasn't a sudden hatred. Obviously, hatred for this movie has been building for like 2 or 3 years at this point. It feels like longer. And I'm going to be honest with you, we kind of talked about this in some live videos last year. We were talking about Zegler and the Hunger Games. I don't even really know what the controversies were in regards to Zegler herself. The only controversy I knew about was the Peter Dinklage thing, where Dinklage was on, I think, Mark Maron's podcast, and he was talking about how, you know, little people shouldn't play degrading roles like dwarves or something like that. And because of one person, because Peter Dinklage, who is extremely rich, extremely popular, and probably has a lot of pull, said this thing, Disney had a knee-jerk reaction and decided, we're not going to cast little people as the dwarves, we're going to do some weird CGI thing with, you know, other actors. So then, a lot of actors who are little people come out and say, like, you know, Dinklage, what the fuck are you doing? This is how we work. This is how we make our money, and we're fine with that. Like, it's like you're literally taking our jobs. You're getting our jobs taken away from us, and it's like, I'm glad you're sitting on your mountain of money, but there's all of the rest of us. And Disney, of course, did not want to backpedal twice. So we get whatever the fuck these dwarves are. So here's the thing also is, before we even get into like how everybody has felt about Snow White this particular Snow White for quite some time now, the Disney live action remake is something that just immediately, you know, triggers a lot of people. Just those words together, Disney live action remake, make a lot of people really, really mad. And I just have never cared. Like, I don't, because, not just because there's so many other movies in the world, there's so many other companies in the world, that I just can't fixate on this. And I grew up with all these movies. Like, The Lion King, obviously, is, like, a favorite of all time. The original Snow White, the animated one, is probably an all-time favorite. There's a video from way back on this channel where I talk about my love for it. All these movies, Aladdin, all of those. Everything that's been remade, Beauty and the Beast, all of that. Lilo and Stitch coming up. These are all movies that I just really loved, for the most part. Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty I never gave a fuck about. They were so boring to me, and I explain that in other videos on this channel as well. But most of these, they come out, and it's just like, I really just don't care. Because I know what's going to happen. They're going to come out, they're probably going to make a lot of money, most of them, but then they're going to vanish, because they don't have staying power. The animated ones have staying power, and we'll always go back to them. they just really don't matter. They're just money-making machines for Disney, and they will come and go. And when they come and go from theaters, when they come and go from my line of vision, I basically forget about them. Just recently, Robert Zemeckis' Pinocchio remake with Tom Hanks just came up recently when I was talking to a friend, and they asked me if I had seen it. And I said, yeah, and then I started to go, because I didn't like it, and I started to go into this diatribe of why I didn't like it, and that's when I realized I don't even fucking remember it. Once again, there is a video on this channel from whenever it came out, a couple years ago, whenever it was. Maybe it was in the COVID era, or the lockdown era, but yeah, I did a whole video on it, and I talked about the whole thing, and then when my friend asked me about it, I just had nothing. Like, my mouth open and just nothing came out, because I don't remember it. And that's it. They come and they go. So, with that in mind, people seem to have been certain people. I'm not trying to attack like like if you're somebody that, like, you know, casually hates this movie or whatever, that's fine. But then I'm not talking about you. But there are seemingly people who have devoted their lives to this movie and its hatred, and that is fucking insane to me. And I know a lot of them are doing it for money. A lot of them are doing it for views. They know their audience. They know what their audience wants to hear, and they're gonna play it up when they probably don't actually give a fuck one way or the other. But there are also people who seem like this is their life. Ever since this movie was announced and Rachel Zegler did or said whatever she did or said, this is their life now. And for this movie, I'm certainly not about to sacrifice my life for this movie. I can tell you, I don't really like anything about it. Like, I'm not sure I can find a positive. But I don't fucking care, because the second I finish talking about it, I'm going to completely forget that it exists, probably. And that's where we are. And I say that as somebody, and you can go back, it's particularly in the live videos again, I have not been kind to Rachel Zegler in the past on this channel ever, because when West Side Story came out, and it's like, oh, Spielberg, you know, auditioned like 1,000 people, and she was the perfect Maria. And I watched that movie, and it's like, wow, everybody in this movie is a standout except Rachel Zegler. And the fame that she got off of that movie was baffling to me. And I really liked that movie, too, that version of it. Except for her. So, like I said, I don't even know what she did or said that pissed everybody off in regards to this movie. I never liked her because I don't think she's talented. And I said the same thing for The Hunger Games and whatever the hell else she's been in after that. I think she was in the second Shazam. I don't even remember what else she's been in, because she's so... Anytime I do remember her, it's like, oh, I don't think she's very good. But any other time, I apparently forgot she was there. So, that's how I feel about her. Similarly for Gal Gadot also. When she was cast as the Queen, it was like Zegler, Snow White, and her as the Queen is like the first two casting choices that came out. And it's like, oh, well, this will be the most bland fucking movie ever. And that was basically my last thought of it for a while. And that's pretty much what it is. It's like, of all the choices you could have had, this is what we're going for. It's like the Kristen Stewart movie was kind of shit also, but, you know, Charlize left something to remember. This is like the most sort of generic who's popular right now kind of thing. Because obviously when this was cast, you could say Gal Gadot was pretty popular. Like, off of Wonder Woman specifically. But then, like, you know, Wonder Woman 2 came out and was horse shit. And, whatever, she did the Imagine thing during lockdown. And it's like, all these things are, like, sort of plummeting her popularity as they go. Justice League, that's what I was trying to think of. Where she had, like, one line reading. where she says, like, you know, Kal-El no or something, which is something that didn't even register in my mind, but is now this meme that, like, follows her around to show how, like, shitty she apparently is. I just think she's super bland. That's really the only thing to me. So, just immediately this thing was lifeless, but I'm not, like, you know, I'm not insanely mad about something. So that's... And here's the thing also, is... My first thought was to, why don't I just wait till, like, this is streaming or something? But the thing about it is there are times where not only do I not get the hatred sometimes, but sometimes I might actually like something that most people don't. Like, when Jon Favreau did his Lion King remake, I saw that, and it was like, it just felt really pointless and really drawn out. It's like, why did we need to take this perfect, like, 88-minute movie and make it 2 hours, throw in songs nobody's going to remember, and whatever else is going on. And like I said, it just didn't stick. As soon as I left the theater, I practically forgot it existed. And then Mufasa came out last year, and everybody's like, oh, Mufasa's so, you know, boring and pointless. Why did they need to make this? This is dumb and that's dumb and whatever. The songs I remember, whatever. For some reason, I didn't mind Mufasa. I almost might say I kind of liked it. To a degree. I also don't remember much, like everything else. But I remember that I was fine with it while I was seeing it. I was never mad at it. I thought it was easygoing, and it was fine. It wasn't unpleasant. That's what I'm saying. So, I thought, well, if everybody can hate Mufasa, basically, compared to this, hate's a strong word for Mufasa, what people have said, but, it's like, if I can be okay with that, who's to say this isn't completely being... Because, once again, I don't watch trailers or anything like that. I might have seen a still here and there, but that doesn't really say much of anything, especially for a movie like this. So, it was like, it's probably being blown out of proportion. And I will say right up front, of fucking course it's being blown out of proportion. If you think this is the worst movie you've ever seen, you've probably seen 10 movies in your life. There are things out there that are so much... Once again, not that there's anything to defend here, by the way. But for the love of God, if I'm going to tell you the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life, this isn't even going to pop into my head. Not even close. So that's... Yeah, so that's right. So just really quickly, we'll go through the shit that I don't care for, and we'll end this. So now, I will say, I was pleasantly surprised, again, like with Minecraft, that it's under 2 hours. It's only like an hour 40, again. So it's like, these days, that's pretty good, to be that restrained, and to not have to stretch it out that much. So, still though, it starts off, and she's a child, and she's growing up, and it's like, as soon as I saw, like, her parents and that she was a child, I was like, you're already too long. Just fucking start. The original movie starts, she's, like, already practically an adult, and it's fine. Just go. And we don't need the backstory. They try to play that more of a part into this one's plot, if you can call it that. But it's not adding anything worthwhile. So, yeah, as soon as I saw her as a child, it's like, you're too long. Just jump ahead. And we stay in that for, like, 10 minutes. So that's where, like, that extra 10 minutes in the runtime is just to see her as a child doing the typical backstory prologue bullshit. There's a lot... Yes, there's very boring, generic songs. There's, like, one or two. Like, Hi-Ho is in here, of course, and Whistle While You Work is in here, of course. Both have been significantly altered, and they add more songs that add nothing whatsoever. They're very boring and forgettable. I can't even tell you what the gist of those songs were. They just went in and out. Not only did they just go in and out, I'm not even sure they went in. As soon as, like, somebody would start singing, it's just like, oh, my mind's going somewhere else now. It's like, what else do I need to do today? And then just wait for the song to end. That's basically what it is. They even give Gal Gadot a villain song, and what's more iconic than the Disney villain song like trademark. Like that's always gonna be like, even in like the worst movies or the most boring movies or whatever, at least the villain song will always bring it to life. Again, couldn't even tell you the gist of the villain song. Just nothing is sticking at all. So that's actually like a lot of the runtime is these forgettable songs. So that's probably one of its biggest problems, honestly. So, and to talk about, I guess we'll talk about the hi-ho scene also, because that's like, I mean, in the original animated movie, when it fades to black, and then we fade back in, and you see, like, the car, and then the song is starting, and you see them working in the mine, what feels more magical and takes you back than seeing that? And then the scene playing out, where they're just working in the mine, and they're singing the song, and then they start up hi-ho, and they go home. Well, we start... obviously, they're going to make it as big as they possibly can, for some reason. So they're in this really, really massive mine, and we see them come to work. Then we see them work, and they do a whole bunch of different stuff. They go down a car like a roller coaster, and they fight and shit, and then they go home. We see their entire workday, and it's like, and like I said, it's this massive, massive, massive looking mine that's like colorful and all that, and it's like, it's a nice idea. And normally I would say, you know, if you're gonna go big, why not go big? You know, go for it. Like, be ambitious or whatever. But you look at that original scene, and it's like, that's not a big mine they're working. It's just a little cave they're working in, and yet that magic feeling is there. So like it's just inherently there, and they didn't need to go super, super big. It's just the 7 dwarves in a cave they can almost barely fit in. And that works. So when you're looking at it, it almost feels like, it's almost just like there's like a disdain for how small that cave was. Because it's like, oh no, we have to make it as big and big and big as possible. But there's no... the magic feels somehow sucked out of it the bigger you go, and the more it seems like you're trying to add. Because it's basically like a desperate attempt to justify the existence of the whole thing, I guess is what it feels like. Because like I said, sometimes taking something small and making it big can really pay off, but this is not that. So I guess there's one positive I can say about this movie. I think they did nail the shot when they're going home and they walk across the log. That iconic shot, the recreation of that, I did really love. I loved seeing that. Even if it only lasts for like 1 second, it was there, and it looked really good. So it had that going for it. And so about the dwarves themselves, apart from, yes, they're fucking weird looking. And they are a horror show, yes. That was one thing where I thought people might have been maybe blowing out of proportion, but then I saw, not only did I see them, I saw them in motion, and it's like, oh yeah, this should not look like this. But it's not even just that. It's the fact that, yes, the dwarves are chaotic. Like the scene where they're like washing up for dinner is like 10 minutes long in the original movie. Like, yes, they are very chaotic. That is their thing. But this feels less like chaos and more like noise. Like white noise. A lot of white noise. And just a lot of the time. And then I guess the way they try to tone that down is for some reason, they thought Dopey should have an arc. Like a real arc. Like he speaks, even. And it's the kid... I had to look this up. It's the kid from No Hard Feelings. You have seen Jennifer Lawrence grind on Dopey. If you didn't know that, you know that now. So... and yeah, so it's like they bully Dopey. And that's like its own thing. Dopey goes outside and sulks, and he and Snow White have their own connection. And it's like, you feel like there should be an emotional connection here, but number one, the dwarves look like a horror show, so Dopey looks like a horror show. So, so there's already not resonance there, but also it's just like filler. This is just making it longer. And there's no emotional connection to this. And it seems like, yeah, there's times where, like, the dwarves maybe don't get along or something, but to seem like they're ousting Dopey for a period feels very, like, this isn't it. This isn't the vibe. So, that's something I didn't care for. I also thought it was weird that Whistle While You Work happens with the dwarves. I think I had heard something about that, where she wasn't going to do Whistle While You Work with the animals for some reason. There's animals in the... Their animals are there in the movie, so I don't even know what that... I don't know if there's a... Like I said, I feel like I heard that a while back, so I don't know if there's a story that goes with that, or if it's just a weird call. I don't know, but... And yeah, they were gonna like revamp the whole Prince thing, because you bring up Snow White now, the original movie, and somebody's gonna say, "Oh, but she knew the prince for like 20 seconds, and then he kissed her while she was dead." The fucking weirdo, and that's her happily ever after. And yeah. But it's also a fairy tale. That's what fairy tales were. If your child grows up thinking that fairy tales are real, that's your problem as a parent, I think. It's a fucking fairy tale. That's what they are. They meet the Prince Charming and they go off. But so their idea to tweak this is to bring in this love interest that is, I guess, a not prince, but who's also a dude that there's barely any connection with, that kisses her while she's dead. So once again, it just felt like a waste of time, because there's just it just feels like there's nothing here. They bring in other characters, like the guy that tries to kill her at the beginning that we see in both versions. He kind of comes back and has like other things to do, but there's other characters here that are like tracking them through the woods. That's a whole thing. I really lost track of what was going on when we stayed in the woods for a long time. When we were like out of the cottage and into the woods. I just kind of didn't care after a while. And then they do shit, just stuff that changes things, but stuff that you don't even hear about ahead of time. It's just when you know the way these things work, it just feels like very predictable of a change. So when, like in the animated movie, when the witch becomes the decrepit peddler lady, she never goes back, if I remember correctly. She's always the old decrepit peddler lady for the rest of the movie until she's dead, once she becomes the old decrepit peddler lady. So it's just so fucking predictable that not only does Gal Gadot become the old decrepit peddler lady, but it's like, I don't know if it's CGI or deep fake stuff or whatever it is, it doesn't look like makeup. I really don't think it's makeup. And that's how they do it. But then she eats the apple, she dies, and then the witch goes back to looking like Gal Gadot. And it's like, you just fucking knew they were going to do that, right? You knew she was only going to be old and decrepit for like a second, and then go right back to looking like her normal self for the climax. This climax that is so dragged out. It's like, when you know the structure of that original movie, this is like so an extra act that we don't need. And there's even a moment where it seems like the dwarves are gearing up for battle, and the only thing they do in the climax is they fucking stand there and they stare at the witch. And that's all they do. And that's... yeah. So there's... like I said, I do feel frustrated talking about some of these things, but like I said, now that I've talked about it, and this is like out of my system, I'm gonna completely forget this movie's exists. Like, I'm literally about to do another video where I talk about 3 other movies, and this won't even be in my head in like the next 5 or 10 minutes. So, thank God for that, I guess. And thank God that this movie has not attached itself to my brain for seemingly the rest of my life, like a lot of other people. So, yeah. But hopefully they're enjoying all the money they're making on this, these faux reactions, I guess you could say. So, but I mean, like I don't want to say that hate isn't warranted. It clearly is. But good God, it's come out, we've seen it, it's time to move on. So let's try that. So yeah, the next 3 are going to be Paddington in Peru, Dogman, and the Plankton movie that was on Netflix. And that'll be the next 3 things. And then there'll be 3 more after that, after a little bit. So things are moving along. So until the next thing, which is very soon, I think that's it.